thanks to everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions for Kweku, you can put them in the chat. There's a chat just on the right-hand side. But I have the honor of introducing you. You come from an amazing background. So PhD, an economist with expertise in the social impact of AI and the future of work in financial advising in Canada. Founder of a machine learning by doing platform whose goal is to enhance and empower the Canadian worker with AI, not replace the labor force with automation. By fostering innovation in financial advising, this human-centered AI could eventually help propel Canada to what Kweku believes is rightful leadership position on the world economic stage. Chair of the Canadian Economics Association Credits Market Conference Session. He's based in Toronto. So thank you for being here. You've got quite the impressive resume. Really looking forward to your content. Again, if anyone has any questions, please place them in the chat. I'll leave you to it, and then I'll be back towards the end to help you with any questions or just do a concluding segment with you. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me. Okay, let's begin. I'll be talking about AI and financial advising in Canada. And thanks to all of you for your attention. Okay, so the order which I'll be following is on your screen. So I'll just, tell you briefly about myself, then delve right into Canada and AI. I'll talk just a little bit about robo-advisors and switch to why human advisors are even more important. Then I'll close with a case of how AI can help financial advising, then wrap up. So, all right. So I'm here in Toronto, and I work on the economics of AI. I used to be a professor. I give talks on this kind of work, and I'm really passionate about how AI can make organizations and individuals more effective, because that will just help AI be more effective. And I provide tailor-made solutions based on different contexts. No two financial advisors are the same. No two companies are the same. Okay, so there is actually something called the Canadian model of AI. This was in a Forbes magazine article some years back, and several countries are trying to emulate Canada's success in AI. So a lot of what we think of as AI is actually Canadian invented. And there's a very strong academic community in Toronto, in Montreal, and in Alberta. And these do, I think, the vast majority of academic research. However, the main thing which people have been wrestling with is how to get more connected with the business community to turn theory into commercial practice. So that's one thing which you're going to be hearing a lot about. Okay, so one thing which makes this a little complicated is, as you may know, the big tech companies from the US have all set up shop in Canada for a good reason, because this is the center of AI worldwide. And, they're hiring a lot of the Canadian AI experts to come work for them, which is fine. But, we're trying to think about how we can have a Canadian presence, not just sell our algorithms to the US and then buy them back at higher prices. So that's why it becomes important for collaborations and so on within the country. Okay, so the question I get a lot is, will AI replace human advisors? And I really don't see that happening anytime soon, for a variety of reasons that I'll get into. But what we see happening is AI working with people, a hybrid system where humans benefit from AI, become more effective, and AI, gets more data from humans to be more helpful. So it's more of a complementary relationship instead of a substitute one. Okay. All right. So robo-advisors, as you may know, are these platforms which, they would take a survey and then provide automated financial planning advice. They're often used in investments, but it's worth noting that the vast majority of money in Canada is still managed by human hands. Okay, And the other thing to note is, if you're curious about robo-advisors, few of them are AI per se. So what they're doing is automating modern portfolio theory or standard ways that advisors tend to work. So it's not really doing anything which you might not do on your own. And in fact, in most cases, you would expect the robo advisor to get the answer which you would have gotten on your own. Okay. There are exceptions like so-called smart beta investing where AI is being found more useful, but most of these platforms we're seeing so far are still rather traditional. Okay. All right. So, sorry you can't see the title, but here I'm just talking about why human advisors are important. So people tend to trust other people. Okay, and this is really important. Studies show that if an algorithm makes a mistake, people are a lot less forgiving than they would be with a person, because if you're a financial advisor, you build trust with your customers, you relate to them, you understand their emotions, all these different things that are very far from approximating with an algorithm. However, AI systems can replicate human biases, so I think the most popular example, are tech companies which try to create their own financial services, even though they're not really financial advisors, so what ends up happening is the algorithm will just pick up the biases the engineers have. So there was one case where one tech company's smart card, a very popular one, it tended to discriminate against women. And yeah, so it's by no means perfect. And the area of AI that focuses on ethics is called algorithmic fairness. And that's some of the stuff that I work on. And the idea is to try and integrate human ethics into algorithms. But in the end, it's not as good as a human that can actually care about another, and so on. Okay, so the area being used the most in the country are on trading desks. What they're doing is actually very simple. They're modeling the economy to make short-term decisions. Ordinary investors, some try to participate, but it's really important to know what strategy is being used before getting involved. And as far as how well artificial exchange trade funds perform relative to humans, it's still too early to tell. So yeah, it's still an emerging space, basically. But more recently, we're seeing a shift towards trying to bring AI into traditional financial services, like relationship management. And that's what I'll be talking about from here on out. Okay. Oh, just a second. Where was I? Oh, okay. So how would this work in practice? In the best case scenarios, we want AI which helps financial advisors be more efficient. We're not trying to think of a scenario where AI can replace financial advisors, because that's just not on the table. Okay, so if you think about a case where, let's say a financial advisor is working with a client, and the financial advisor is thinking of, maybe this person could use this other service they haven't signed up for yet. Okay, something like that. So, they're using product A, and you're trying to figure out whether product B might be a good fit for them. Okay. Now, if you're a financial advisor working with a banking institution, what normally happens is there would be a team of analysts that would try and model this to come to the decision, but that would take several hours and in some cases days to come to a decision. But what would be more helpful would be something which can pull the client information and model various recommendations in near real time and give a suggestion at the push of a button. Okay, so at this point, the financial advisor is not just going to, oh, okay, the AI says I should do this, so I'm just going to do it. No, they have to compare that with what they would have wanted to do. Okay, and at least in the vast majority of cases, they should agree. So if they're too off, then it's up to the financial advisor to, kind of parse that information and decide what makes the most sense on a case-by-case basis. So the reason why this is important is partly because, of the challenges which financial advisors face. Okay, and the area which I've heard a lot about is in the area of mental health. Okay, so in some cases, some people are very stressed out because they have targets they need to meet, and not so much time, and it can affect their health because they need to get to a certain number of users in a certain amount of time. Okay, so what AI does here is to just reframe the problem as a machine learning problem. So you need X users, then we just need to predict who they are. Okay, so rather than cycle through a lot of people and hope some of them will say yes, we're just going to go after those who we have very high confidence that they're going to say yes. Okay, so it's a much more targeted search. Instead of throwing, darts at the board and hoping that some of them will stick, we just go after people who already have a latent interest. Okay, so that brings us to deep learning. Okay, so deep learning is, I think, the more modern form of machine learning. It's inspired by the human brain. So it takes features and then makes predictions. And I think in Canada, it's mostly used in fraud detection and other areas. Okay, so it's not as complex as it sounds. I don't want anyone to think it's as complex as it sounds. And this is just a very quick summary. So let's say you want to predict the output. And let's say, in the simple case, you want to predict whether someone's creditworthy or not. Okay, so the most simple case. Someone comes to your desk, are they creditworthy or not? The way this works is, just like in real life, you would want to look at characteristics of the person. Okay, so you might want to, one input might be how much money they make. Another input might be, what sector do they work in? Another input might be, how experienced are they? How old are they? And so on and so forth. So these form the input layer of the model. Okay, they're just characteristics of the client, which you would normally use to decide if you were deciding on your own. And we feed the inputs into a hidden layer. All that means is that we're going to assign weights to the inputs depending on how important we think they are. The machine will first do this at random, and over time it will add a bias to the weight. Then it's going to spit out a recommendation. He's creditworthy or he's not creditworthy. So this is just the more simple version, but this is what all of these apps do, right? So if you're talking to Siri, Siri is taking inputs on how long your sentence is, what words do you use, and so on, and spitting out the same thing, and so on, like all the other apps you may be using. And we're just bringing the same idea here. Okay, so the goal is, the reason why people are excited about this kind of thing is by hopefully improving the mental health of financial advisors and making the work easy, because the whole economy depends on financial advisors in one way or the other. We all benefit as a whole, including AI scientists. Okay, so it's in everyone's interest, financial advisors, to be getting business, getting products out there and targeting them more efficiently when you think about it. Okay, so this is just the same thing, but with sticker notes and with a particular, if we were doing this with a particular institution. Okay, so it's the same idea, but this time, if you could think about this as being a consumer database, if you're like an established financial advisor, and you can think about this, as maybe information you have on their transactions or investments or whatever the case may be. And you're going to build, characteristics of users. So, how long have they been working with a financial advisor? their demographics, the performance, and you can even add characteristics of the financial advisor themselves. Feed this in a model and spit out the prediction. Should they get this new product or not? And you can predict pretty much anything that's relevant to financial advising. Okay, so that's most of the way this tends to work. A lot of it will vary on a case-by-case basis. It's not really expected for financial advisors to be writing up all these graphs that I've been showing. The idea is that they should just be able to push a button and out pops the prediction. Okay, it should be done in seconds while they're talking to the client and relating to them and understanding them in a way that the machine never will. Okay, so the hope is that over time we can make financial advisors' lives easier in this sector. Okay, so these are the kinds of things which people working on AI financial advising, spend a lot of time thinking about. Like, I think some of the gaps that remain is, trying to, get financial advisors aware these things, getting a system up and running, like, it's not as complex as it might sound, or as I might be making it sound, but it's in everyone's interest from an economic standpoint, for financial advisors to, help all of us to make better decisions, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that we want to predict client needs to better and to more efficiently serve them. Okay, and to take away the guesswork, that, if you're chasing a prospect and there's no, like, that nothing's going to happen, you're better off knowing sooner rather than later anyway. That's the premise. So if you're focused on prospects which, can bring business to you and so on and so forth, then it can reduce the stress that financial advisors go through. Okay, so that's pretty much, what I have. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to go back to the screen and see if there's some questions that I need to look at. Okay.